Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone. Well, for those who might be new to my channel or those who haven't heard me mention this before in previous videos, so you didn't know this, I'm a Catholic. I'm a Catholic who also happened to live through the worst of the whole sexual abuse, the modern sexual abuse crisis being exposed in the Catholic Church. In fact, not just on an international level, but also in my own church. I was part of a church at one point where the parish priest had been convicted of sexual abuse. So I understand what a major sexual abuse crisis looks like, a sexual offending crisis, one that has been systemic, that has been ongoing, that has been systematically covered up or has been surrounded by a conspiracy of silence and bad decision-making that has only made the situation worse and led to a greater number of victims. And that's why when I look at what I see going on right now in Hollywood, I am confident that we are seeing not the end of, but only just the beginning of a very, very serious sexual offending scandal that is just only now just starting to come to light. We've obviously had the Harvey Weinstein news in the last couple of weeks, which was a pretty big deal. In the last couple of days, though, now we've had writer-director James Toback. I believe there's 48 different allegations have been made against him, and they're very serious. They are sexual assault. He is not as big a name as Harvey Weinstein, but he's not a minnow in Hollywood either. He's a known writer-director. It's not just him, though. In the last couple of years, we've had the likes of Bill Cosby. The director Bryan Singer has also had serious allegations made against him. Corey Haim, the child actor, again, he is in the news in the last couple of days, calling for other stars who to come forward. And like he was a child actor in Hollywood and for years has been saying he was the victim, and not just him, but some of his peers, of very serious sexual abuse. This seemed to be corroborated. I think it was last year, Elijah Wood, the actor Elijah Wood, did an interview in which he mentioned this as well and talked about this being a problem within Hollywood, and how I think he talked about the fact that his parents had helped to sort of steer him, protect him from a lot of those problems. If you go wider than Hollywood, the entertainment industry in the United Kingdom and Australia, there was Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris in Australia, very, very serious sexual offending. And of course, we could go back for decades, and we have the likes of Roman Polanski, who pled guilty to having sex with a 13-year-old girl. Initially, he was charged with stupefying, drugging, and raping that girl. But then he took a plea bargain where he accepted the lesser charge, which is still obviously very serious, of unlawful sexual connection with a 13-year-old. But as soon as he realised that he was probably going to have to face jail time for admitting his guilt, he fled the country. And he has never been back to America since as a result, and he has also avoided countries that have good extradition treaties with America so that he will never have to go back and face up to his crimes. As I believe it, as of October, there's a new allegation that's been made against him in October. These are historic allegations. But as of October this year, there are now 4 different people who have accused or are claiming that Roman Polanski, particularly when they were young women, has sexually assaulted or raped them. And not only has this happened, and not only did he flee, but Roman Polanski has been lauded and celebrated by Hollywood for decades. And lots of people within Hollywood have happily celebrated Roman Polanski despite the fact that he pled guilty to unlawful sexual connection with a 13-year-old girl. Now, this is a very, very serious crisis, and we are only just starting to see the beginnings of it. As I said, as someone who's a Catholic and who saw what happened within my own church, I can tell you right now that this has all of the hallmarks of something that is far bigger than what we have seen to date, and that it is only going to get worse from this point onwards. If the pattern is the same, and I believe it will be, we will start to see more big-name players who are accused of very serious sexual offending. And not just that, but it's really going to start to get problematic when it starts to fully come to light. And it's already starting to come to light in regards to the Harvey Weinstein scandal and even the James Toback scandal, that there are a lot of people who knew about this and who chose to either do or say nothing about it. People who are perhaps big name players, directors, writers, actors within the Hollywood system who have chosen to do nothing about this. And effectively, if you choose to do nothing about something, to say nothing, to do nothing, and you are in a position to actually say or do something, then you have become complicit in this scandal. You have helped to make the situation worse. You have actually, by your conspiracy of silence and the way in which you've conducted yourself, have helped to protect the perpetrators of these heinous and reprehensible acts. As I said, this is the same type of sexual offending scandal that we saw within the Catholic Church. And what it was surrounded by was not just the reprehensible actions of that minority of priests, but it was the much bigger group of people, if you like, who maintained that cone of silence and effectively protected and sheltered them and moved them around and allowed them to create even more victims. And the Hollywood system now quite clearly has the same sort of problem. And it's, as I said, it's only going to get worse. More and more of these allegations are going to come to light. Now, part of the problem here too is that there is a very, very, very clear element of hypocrisy here. You might remember last year's Oscars, and the 2016 Oscar for Best Picture went to none other than the film Spotlight. Now, Spotlight is a movie about the Catholic Church's sexual abuse crisis in Boston and the cover-up that went on around that. Now, I've seen the film a couple of times. It's an okay film, but I don't think that Spotlight is an Academy Award-winning Best Picture film. I don't think it's a masterpiece. I don't think it's that level of filmmaking. There's nothing dramatically wrong with it, but I do not think that it's a Best Picture, especially when you compare it to the fact that Room was also nominated, far better film, and also The Revenant, again, far better film. And those two films alone on that list of nominees for 2016 were far more deserving than Spotlight was. So I think everyone acknowledges the fact that the reason Spotlight won was primarily because of the subject matter. As I said, it is not an example of a filmmaking masterpiece, but it was the subject matter that was important and the way in which the director chose to tackle that. And effectively, here was Hollywood saying this sort of abuse of power of vulnerable people is not acceptable. The conspiracy of silence that went on around it was reprehensible and shouldn't have been allowed to happen. And it is important that we shine a light on this type of offending and the people who help to make it worse by saying and doing nothing when they are in a position to say or do something about it. Well, Hollywood now has the exact same type of crisis. And what makes it, as I said, even more problematic is not just that they're giving out awards to movies like Spotlight while turning a blind eye to this, but regularly through things like the Academy Awards ceremony and all sorts of other pulpits, Hollywood now acts as if it's a moral guardian, as if they are the new clergy who are there to dictate and to tell us what is right and wrong and to call out the people who they consider to be the unclean in our midst, the offenders, those who are worthy of judgment and being treated as outcasts. So while they are playing moral guardian, there is a very, very serious moral crisis that has been unfolding and ongoing for decades in their own house, and many people have chosen to do or say nothing about that. And that is a very serious problem. And like I said, I think this is only going to get worse. And what I mean by that is we are going to hear more and more. The ball is only just starting to roll. We all thought that Harvey Weinstein and the allegations that were made against him were pretty serious. And the sort of the scope, the nature, and how long it had been going on was pretty bad, right? But what I think we're going to find more and more is not just that lots of other powerful Hollywood people have been doing this, but in actual fact, a lot of people within Hollywood, and even people that you and I might have respected as actors and directors, effectively were complicit by their silence. And they actually ended up making the problem worse and sheltering these minority of abusive and offenders, and have actually created an even greater role, even greater number of victims because of that. So my hope going forward, and this is my sincere hope, that what happens is that anyone in Hollywood who is genuinely guilty of this type of offending is quick to admit their offence. That they don't try and lawyer up and pay people out and hide and lie and continue the dishonesty. That they actually just grow a moral backbone and they admit publicly to their wrongdoing, regardless of how serious it is, that they own it. That is the truly humane response in the face of a victim, of someone that you have victimized, is to actually, with absolute and unwavering honesty and sincerity, to admit your guilt. That's the starting point, right? And from there, that they don't try and fight appropriate responses, appropriate penance, appropriate putting right and making restitution to these victims for what they've done to them. Even if that means jail time, even if that means losing their vast fortune in order to hand over to their victims and to make some form of reparation, even though financial reparation and other things like that in no way make up for the victimization of this nature that is done to a person. But it's a sign that the person is at the very least willing to be honest about the very serious nature of the offending that they've committed. And I think we all expect that people who are caught and people who are caught up and who have been complicit in this level of offending actually own it. They admit their responsibility and they take action to put it right, even if that means having to face jail time. And I also hope that Hollywood takes a very long, hard look at itself. The film Spotlight is aptly named, and right now Hollywood needs that same type of spotlight to be shone on it. And that's not just people like Weinstein and Toback. That is everyone surrounding them who did or said nothing, and some of them who are even now just coming out and trying to, I guess, at the tail end of it, trying to perhaps make amends by saying something now, when it's probably realistically far too late for that. That they actually take ownership of their failures, and just like the minority who have perpetrated this offending, that they are also willing to accept their part in all of this, and then moving forward to ensure that they don't act the same way in future. If that doesn't happen, then the culture of Hollywood will not change, and it will be another several more decades of victims who are created by the system, and the system will keep creating victims and lots of victims until finally all of those involved are willing to actually admit the various roles that they've played and to commit themselves to proactively changing the culture. That's the only way things have begun to change within the Catholic Church, and there have been some massive changes within the Catholic Church now. And there's so many, changes of policy and the way in which things unfold and take place now within Catholicism at an administrative level, that there is a much greater level of safety and a much greater reduced risk for people becoming the victims of this type of offending. I mean, you can never eliminate it totally, but the only way that Hollywood can also begin to see that same cultural change is if they first start by actually owning the seriousness of the problem. And as I said, I think this is only going to get worse before anything can ever get better. We are only now just starting to see the tip of the iceberg. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on Left Foot Media.